On January 2nd, 2014, adequate notice of this meeting pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act has been furnished by inclusion thereof in the annual schedule of meetings for 2014, which has been posted on the bulletin board at Borough Hall, filed with the Borough Clerk, faxed to the Our Town, the Record, the Community News, and the County Seat newspapers, and distributed to all persons, if any, requesting copies of same pursuant to said act. In case of an emergency or fire alarm, you must evacuate the building by using any of the exit doors in the room. They're immediately to my right, and the double doors at the rear of the room. Occupants must exit the building by using the staircase and not the elevator. This meeting is being recorded by both video and audio and may be rebroadcast.
Can everyone please rise for the invocation?
Let us pray. Lord, by your very essence, you are fellowship and community, and you call each of us to be reconciled with you and our neighbors so that we may be creatures, the creatures you've created us to be. We often fall short of this calling, but we thank you that your grace is sufficient and steadfastly faithful, calling us to newness of life, calling us to find the very meaning of our lives in service to you and one another. As a community, we gather here this evening to deliberate on the pressing needs of Maywood. By your Spirit, empower and enlighten each of us so that our decisions would reflect your will for our lives. Guide our leaders so that they may remain faithful and diligent in the exercise of the office granted them by this community. Let us collectively, citizen, civil servant, your children, strive for justice all our days. This we pray in your name. Amen.
Everyone please remain standing for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call.
Mayor Padavano.
Here. Council
members Lindenow.
Here.
Baroni. Absent. Eisenberg.
Here.
Messer.
Here.
Fabre.
Here.
Ballerini.
Here.
Borough Attorney Ronald Dario is on his way.
I'm here.
Oh, I didn't see you speaking. Borough Clerk Jean Pellegrin is present. Borough Administrator Roberta Stern is absent.
Okay, first item on the agenda is the Borough Engineer monthly report.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor and Council, tonight we've issued an engineer's report dated the 23rd for tonight's meeting. The first item on the list is the economic recovery, in particular the pump station project. Over this past month, we've acquired information from the Borough Engineer of Paramus as it relates to inspection fees and emergency fees, which we've provided to your conflict attorney. The only two open items with respect to the interlocal agreement relate to discussions on how future rate increases would occur and how the sanitary sewer discharge rate would be utilized with respect to the different types of properties. So I think it's slowly but surely it's coming to conclusion, it appears at this time. The second item on the engineer's report relates to the year 2013 road program. This past month, East Hunter was paved accordingly and addressed. Striping along with some punch list items, which include some landscaping, still needs to be addressed, but that portion of the project is being wrapped up. Per the direction of the borough, we've also acquired a quote from the contractor to address a section of Spring Valley Avenue from Spring Valley Road to the Paramus-Maywood border near the pump station. The contract budget provided was $40,000 and could be accomplished with a change order if the governing body chose to pursue in that direction. We would just like some input from the governing body if you'd like us to authorize them accordingly and issue a change order. As it relates to the final aspect, though, of the awarded contract, the West Fairmont Avenue parking lot near the school, per discussions with the borough, we're going to hold off with the paving of that portion of the project until the school is out, so that not to impact any children being dropped off, students in the area, teachers parking within the parking lot, so that can be accomplished with minimal impact to the surrounding neighborhood. The third item within our report is the Grand Avenue traffic study. Brian Tondola, our traffic engineer, or Director of Traffic Engineering from our office, would present a study as it relates to it, and he'll have some handouts that could be discussed. Just to go quickly through the remainder of the report, PSE&G is moving forward with their project as it relates to Central Avenue from the Rochelle Park border to the Hackensack border. They haven't pulled any permits as of yet, but they've been slowly but surely moving forward to do so. Maywood Avenue streetscape, the borough did receive a grant in the amount of $149,000 to address the streetscape from East Hunter to Central Avenue. We've issued a proposal as it relates to that project for review and consideration. The $149,000, though, doesn't incorporate both sections of the streetscape. It's a portion of the streetscape, so the borough would need to determine if they'd like to break the project in half, say, from the railway to East Hunter, or utilize some capital funds to address the full length of the project. Oak Avenue and Parkway, that was a project that we filed a municipal aid grant last year. The borough didn't receive any funding, but we did prepare a discretionary aid grant since the notice of the letter, which has been forwarded to DOT for reconsideration for that project. We also issued a proposal as it related to some master plan work for Memorial Park for consideration by the governing body. And also, we've done some research with respect to the community garden and irrigation system. We've contacted United Water as it relates to conducting a fire flow test. There was a fee that they were going to be looking to be paid. It was $160. We were discussing that with the borough administrator to hopefully have United Water consider a waiving of that fee prior to the tests being considered. Other than that, that concludes the report, but I'd be glad to address any questions and comments. And if the governing body had time, Brian would like to make a presentation as it relates to the Grand Avenue traffic study.
Sure. Just with regard to the streetscape issue, I'm going to try to set up with the borough administrator a meeting, perhaps with your office and the property owners and business owners in that area, just so we can kind of get their input and
Sure.
Make them aware of what's going on. And also, maybe if we can start to talk to the county, because I know that they're planning on paving Maywood Avenue within the next year or so, and make sure that they're aware of that and what they can be involved with.
What's the turnaround for an answer on the discretionary aid grant?
There truly isn't any time frame with respect to it. It could take months to receive notification. I know we filed them before, and it typically takes between 4 to 6 months.
Anybody else before we get to the traffic study? Okay. All right.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. For reintroduction, my name is Brian Tondola, and I serve as the Traffic Director at Negley Engineering. We were retained by the borough to revisit and visit the traffic circulation around Memorial School. To do that, we set traffic machines down on Grand Avenue as well as Palmer Avenue, just to get a snapshot of the 24-hour traffic volumes in the area, as well as visit the site, speak with the principal, and there was an officer there this morning from Maywood Police Department that he gave me some insight on the day-to-day management when he's there in the morning. Top line, what we noticed that for the traffic volumes, they were not inordinate on a 24-hour basis for Grant Avenue and Palmer Terrace. They're in like the 700 to 800 cars per day. The streets themselves are designed to within RSIS standards, residential site improvement standards, which would allow for, say, 1,500 to 1,800 per day. So with respect to the streets on a 24-hour basis, the geometry provided is functioning well, and there's capacity there. The specific time periods that seem to be a concern with respect to traffic for Memorial School, which is a K through 3 school, is basically it comes down to the drop-off time in the morning, based on taking photographs there and observing the traffic count intensities. It really comes down between just the period before 8:30. So it's like 8:15 to 8:30 is critical in the morning, if anybody were to ask me a time, it would be 8:23. That's when it's most intense in the morning. You could probably, as parents or people in the area, you could probably set your watch to that time when it's the most intense. And then similarly, in the afternoon pickup, it's about 3:05 is the most intense time period for the pickup. Each time period has its own peculiarities in terms of impact. The morning did work fairly well. You have 340 feet of drop-off lane on Grant Avenue, as well as a shorter segment on West Fairmont. West Fairmont is used almost with equal intensity as Grant Avenue, but it's shorter because that's where I can understand from my observation where the third graders and the second graders were, and the kindergartners seem to be on the Grant Avenue side, so parents tend to want to see their kids in, and that's where they drop. But be that as it may, there was an officer there. He was shepherding traffic, and as well as the crossing guard at the mid-block crosswalk on West Fairmont and the mid-block crosswalk on Grant Avenue, which seems to serve the drop-off well. What I observed also is that there are, in the afternoon, there was what I'll call the pre-queue, where parents pre-park and kind of dwell before the parking area, before pickup time, up to an hour, sometimes an hour and a half before pickup. It didn't really impact capacity, but they were there. And then either the kids walked there or the parents walked out of their cars and got them. And as you go through the exhibit or the PowerPoint sheets before you, I think I gave you the synopsis of that sheet. So their Maywood police presence was there. There's a site location map, just if we need to talk about specific areas or issues. So then, if we go through the existing conditions, you can see Principal Bear walking down, job done at 8:29, and that's on that sheet. So I had the opportunity to talk to him, and it was done, the rush was done at 8:29. This is pretty typical for North Jersey School. Traffic management is always a recurring issue, and what my experience with schools is once you get a handle on it, you really have to remind parents what the policy is, each incoming kindergarten class, whatever each incoming class is. This is how we do it. This is what we like to see. Whether that's a municipal function or a Board of Ed function or a little bit of both, it's very helpful. You can see in the PM sheets at 3:05, there is a little bit of a pre-queue, and then it gets a little bit busier, but there are sometimes on the West Fairmont drop-off lane back up through to Grant, because as we go to the, what I observed is that because you can't pull out immediately on the West Fairmont, if you are a car at mid-drop-off lane, it blocks the rest of the lane until you're done dropping your kid off. So you can't do, it's not like a pull-up and go, it's a pull-up and then there's cars behind you that want to get in, but they don't want to get in front of you because they know that you have to pull out. So, because you have a 7-car capacity on West Fairmont, and it seemed to be the more intensely used of the two drop-off areas, that seemed to be hampered by that, as well as the crossing guards give priority to the students, so the crosswalk is right at the radius for the easterly part of the drop-off. So that operationally, as you give priority to the students crossing West Fairmont, the drop-off lane is impacted, and it queues back through to Grant Avenue at times, especially during the peak time. So, and then the next sheet in the exhibit, it just illustrates the number of vehicles on Grant Avenue on a daily basis, and if you drill down southbound, northbound, and then the peak period, which is both ways for AM peak and for PM peak. Most of the traffic on Grant Avenue is school generated. When it's not school generated, you have, in a 15-minute period, you have 3 or 5 cars, and there's like another little mini peak when people are getting home from work. But it's really driven or generated by the Memorial School. And similar as a check street, Palmer Avenue has 600 vehicles on a daily basis, and with the peaks being somewhat coincident, but a little bit offset from Grant, but it's also influenced, I believe, by the school traffic. I think there's some pre-parking there as well. So, as I said, the observed issues where West Fairmont drop-off is sometimes blocked because the lead car blocks at mid-drop-off lane. You can't get in behind it, although it's there. So my suggestion is if maybe you could bring a crossing guard up to the T intersection at times, maybe in the morning, to help cross more kids at the T intersection with West Grant, so they're not in front of the queue, but they're behind the queue, and that way you get more bang for your buck for that drop-off. And I don't mean to send the kids at the mid-block up, which is not unheard of at schools, but just not have them come down on the wrong side and have to recross them again, but just have them come on the right side, because the one crossing guard is committed to the mid-block. So maybe only in the morning it would be helpful to maybe have, if you have a floating, sometimes there's a floating crossing guard in a district, and they can just man that for a little bit just to help with West Fairmont. And also, it is a back check for the crossing guard on Grant Ave. And then not that and then if parents are dwelling in the drop-off, mid-drop-off lane, kind of encourage them to move up. Not that I'm requesting a fourth person, but just as a matter of reminder, either from the principal or from the Maywood's Public Safety Department. And one thing is like I noted a catch basin needs to be repaired right there, and so I just had to put that in because
It's on the agenda tonight.
I couldn't help myself. So then, as we thought about the original what reason for being here, I think what I'm saying is to reinforce the drop-off, with public safety and Board of Ed. I think especially as I think parents kind of forget when you go into when the spring weather reappears, and then just to give them a reminder as well as in the fall, but maybe in the spring as well. And then I was thinking about the designation of Grant Avenue as a potential one-way northbound. What benefit do you have? And it reminded me I have the exact same situation at my school where I dropped my sixth grader off. We have a parking lane, a circulation lane, and then another parking lane. And what it does, it leverages the use of the drop-off lane, because as we all experience, and the analogy would be similar to Newark Airport, where you pull up curbside, and then you can circulate the next lane, and the next lane is a travel lane. So you could almost function without the West Fairmont drop-off if you had Grant Avenue as one way. It would almost be like excess capacity, because you have the 340 feet or so for a drop-off, and then you could pull out into a circulation lane just for the drop lane. So it would be circulation lane, the cut-in drop lane, so that can be your pass-through. So there's not the queue blockage that happens when you don't have a lane to get in or a gap to get in traffic, because on Grant Avenue you have the opposing lane right now, and you wouldn't have that. That would either be converted to a parking lane, which would be, not that it's unorthodox, but the drivers would get out on the curbside. But in managing K through 3s, it's not uncommon for, if you have a minivan with the driver door anyway, it doesn't really matter. But it's just one thing to think about if you were to do Grant Avenue as a one-way northbound. The displaced traffic volumes would not be inordinate to disperse anyway, because a lot of the traffic, I believe, is pre-orienting itself to go northbound up Grant anyway to take advantage of the drop lane. There are the ones that come down southbound to park, but that would just be repositioned northbound with the driver's side door going out on the curb. So that would be the benefit of that. And then it would just give you a capacity back. So that's the overview of what we were charged with. My observation, it did work well because you have the corner capacity and you do have the drop lane, which a lot of elementary schools don't have. But if you were to do the one-way, It would just leverage that cut-in lane anyway to be more effective, because then you could pull out when you drop your child off right into the circulation lane that would be created by the one-way. Because there's a 35-foot cross-section there in the drop-off section, and about 26 to 25 and a half lane width where it's just regular two-way traffic. So that's what we had noted when we did our study.
When you're referencing this one-way on Grant, what portion of Grant are we talking about? Are we talking about from
I would do Menzel, is it?
Mendez?
Mendez, I'm sorry, to Coolidge.
So the whole length? Right.
Pretty much,
In front
yes.
of the school.
Right. Yeah, and then, right, because then if you would cut it short, you would force traffic down West Fairmont, which would be the unintended consequence of doing the opposite of what you wanted to do.
But are we not sending traffic that is coming southbound now on Grant? Are we not funneling that all down Palmer into the intersection of Mendez and Grant so that they all come in one direction? I mean, is that problematic? Because quite frankly, right now, that intersection at Mendez, which we've recently designated as a four-way stop sign, it's not signed yet, but it's been designated by ordinance, tends to get a little congested at that intersection.
Right, you would have a dispersion of that southbound traffic, and that is on the order of the southbound traffic in the peak period comes up to be on the order of, like, in the morning, approximately 40 trips that would be reoriented from southbound back around to northbound through either Grant Direct or through Mendez. But yes, there would be an impact to that intersection.
Did you consider starting the classes 10 minutes apart, like take half the grades starting 10 minutes earlier, the other half the grades starting 10 minutes later, so that you don't have so many cars in one shot?
That could be, sometimes you have kindergarten start a little bit later. The only problem with that is that if you have a school population with a lot of siblings, parents have to come back for another cycle, and, you know, sometimes it's bothersome. And in the K through 3 range, it's likely that you have that. But not that it's an impact, it's more of an, I would say, an inconvenience to have them cycle back. Because if they're pre-parking anyway in the afternoon, they're there, it doesn't matter. But for morning drop-off, it helps with the larger school, but I think the population here, it would have, I think, to implement the policy, would not give the policy implementation will probably be harder than the benefit that you're going to gain, you know, because then you have to go to the Board of Ed and have them redo their, because they have all, I think it's all-day kindergarten there?
Yes.
Yes.
So just a question about, the mayor alluded to the Grant Mendez intersection. Did you guys do any evaluation of the traffic over there? Because that is a problem in the morning and in the afternoon when cars are parked on both sides of the street. It restricts, so you can't have two-way traffic. It's too narrow. Did you guys look at that? Is that part of your-
Just topically, just to, like, what I did is I did a check count on Palmer to see if you did a redistribution that as a whole, that other north-south street could take on the traffic. But
So you're comfortable that we could move the traffic flow? We said it was 40 trips a day?
yeah, yes,
Approximately
well,
northbound on Grant?
specific to the critical peak hour in the morning, it
Right.
could, as well as after, even more so, like at 10 o'clock, either street does, there's, in a 15-minute period, it's like 10s and 5s. So it's not like other than the school traffic, non-school times, I don't think it will be an impact.
Right, I'm just wondering if maybe it would have made sense to look more closely at Mendez for opportunities to restrict parking. We did that on Grant Avenue where the street is more narrow.
Right.
We have the two cutouts for drop-off and parking. The stop sign will help in terms of pushing people away from the intersection. They won't be able to park near the stop signs.
Right.
But that section is particularly bad during those peak times, so.
Anybody else have any questions?
I do. One of your suggestions of placing the crossing guard at the intersection of Grant West Fairmont for the morning start, would you feel that that might be a compromise on the safety of the children? Because you have not only the entrance to the playground area at that crosswalk, but you also have the second and third grade doors. You also have across the street from that crossing walk is sort of a dead-end part of the park that comes off of, which street is that? Off of Edel. Would it seem that that might be a little too much of a risk of having a child come out of the park or coming out off the ball field across the street and forgetting not to cross in that area unless you completely remove the crosswalk?
I think the suggestion was to add a third.
It would be supplemental.
Remove it, but add
No,
a-
supplemental, it would be supplemental as needed. And the suggestion was, sometimes a district will have a floating crossing guard, and if they're not assigned anywhere, you could have them come and take that as a post.
So there would be 3.
Correct.
Okay.
Again, just thinking about what you said in terms of the traffic count, I don't see it here called out, but you said the traffic count on West Fairmont was consistent with the traffic counts on Grant. So we have as many as 400 vehicles in either direction.
No, I did not count West Fairmont. I observed that it was intensely used because that's where what I observed to be where the third and second and maybe even first graders were lining up. But it was...
Generally the kindergartners get dropped off
On Grant.
on the southern side of Grant. The
Right.
First graders get dropped off on the northern side of Grant.
Right.
Second, third graders get dropped off around the corner.
Correct.
I'm just curious to what impact that would be if you were to create a one-way the entire way on Grant, perhaps even closing Palmer down during the day, during the school day, to just have Grant used for pickup and drop-off and not have that traffic try to navigate West Fairmont. Then your crossing guard becomes viable for that T intersection. Otherwise, we'd have to add another person there. Not that I'm against that, but...
I don't think you have to go to the measure closing Palmer during school drop-off. I mean, the traffic volumes on Palmer were relatively...
I'm sorry, I didn't say Palmer. I meant West Fairmont.
West Fairmont.
West Fairmont is what I meant.
Right.
What I'm saying is, it was actually the idea that I suggested to Greg last year when I mentioned the traffic study, was that I thought there was a lot of contention with northbound Grant traffic and the turns onto West Fairmont. That I thought that was causing a big problem, the fact that we were letting cars come that way, and it just made sense that we keep the traffic going in one direction.
The left, like at West Fairmont...
Southbound on Grant, turning left onto West Fairmont. I'll get this eventually.
Right.
Yes, took a little cold medicine today.
It wasn't, from what I observed this morning at school drop-off, it didn't seem to be an issue, but the crossing guard, I came on a good day because everything was working well.
Yeah.
And but the restriction of the southbound Grant left turns now would become northbound Grant right turns if the parent wanted to use the same driveway. I don't think you have to limit West Fairmont. I mean, if you have the curb cut out, my experience is use it.
Right.
Really, and it works. It really, if you have it, I believe if the borough went to the effort to do it, to cut it in, just try and maximize it. And I believe if you maximize Grant by looking at a one-way circulation scheme, but keep West Fairmont, even if it's for ancillary drop-off, but do use it for drop-off.
Okay. It's something you probably also didn't observe is while we did the four-way stop at Mendez and that hasn't been signed, there's a no left turn now off of Fairmount onto Grant at certain times, drop-off and pickup, which the intention of that ordinance was to stop conflicting traffic around the corner. Now, I don't know how many people actually make that left and travel down Grant because it is congested down there, and people probably try to avoid that once they've dropped their child off.
I did not observe a heavy left turn queue or an operational backup that there wasn't any left turn queue that backed up through to the drop lane, like there wasn't any overlapping vehicles that trapped, so to speak, someone coming in. It didn't seem to be, like you said, I think people have figured it out. It's easier to make the right to go up and go away from it.
Correct. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any council members have anything on or off the agenda? Councilmember Lindenau. Anything on or off the agenda? Councilman Rudd? Councilman Messa?
No.
Councilman Sebrett?
No.
Council President Bellerin? No.
No, sir.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there are no proclamations tonight. I will open the meeting to the public. Anybody from the public wishing to speak, come forward. Come on up to the microphone. Just state your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Joanne Capinis. I live at 93 East Hunter Avenue. So myself and several of our neighbors would like to approach the council and express our gratitude for your helping to push through the pavement of our street. It was a long time in coming. We tried in prior administrations to get this put through, and you guys really drove it through to the end. So we're very appreciative. It's a big difference in the quality of life for our street. It's just so pleasant to come home and be on a smooth street, and it looks great. So we're all very happy, and we're going to try to organize a block party for maybe later this year if we can get enough participation. So we'd like to invite the whole council to come once we have a date put onto the books.
All right, great. Thank you.
So thank you very much. We really, really appreciate
Taking
it.
the time to come.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. See, borough engineer, every once in a while it works out, right? Anybody else from the public? Okay, we'll close it from the public. We have no pending ordinances. Approval of the minutes. We have up for approval and consideration by council tonight the April 8th, 2014 work session and closed session minutes, the April 22nd, 2014 council meeting and closed session minutes, and the May 6th, 2014 special meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call.
Lindenau?
Abstain to April 8th and May 6th, yes to April 22nd.
Maroney? It's not here. Eisenberg?
One of those meetings was a special meeting.
May 6th.
Abstained for the special meeting, I wasn't here. Yes,
Messa?
Yes.
Sebrett?
yes.
Ballerini?
Yes. There's the bills and claims and requests for public comments. Any public comment on the bills and supplemental bill lists? I will entertain a motion to approve the bills.
Move approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Lindenau?
Yes.
Eisenberg?
Yes.
Messa?
Yes.
Sebrett?
Yes.
Ballerini?
Yes. Correspondence and report of the borough clerk.
The only thing I have this evening is a reminder that next Tuesday is primary election, and the polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Anybody has any questions, feel free to call the borough clerk's office.
The borough administrator is out ill today. Borough attorney.
Mr. Mayor, I do not have a report to give this evening.
Councilman Lindenau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just business as usual at the DPW. They're keeping the fields clean and mowed and baseball's on. That's it. Thank you.
Councilman Eisenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A week and a half ago, we had a verdict in the Esplanade trial. My comments will be limited to what's public because there may be a pending appeal. But in open court, the judge found the homeowner guilty for failure to maintain property in 2013. The homeowner was fined for 64 days at $100 per day for a total of $6,400. They were found guilty for failure to maintain the property in 2014 for 121 days at $300 a day for a total of $36,300. Those two come to $42,700. The second offense that the homeowner was found guilty on was a failure to apply for a permit. The ordinance had provisions for both daily and weekly penalties of $2,000. The judge awarded 44 weeks at $2,000 for a total of $88,000. all the fines coming to $130,700. The judge said that the defendant had total disregard for the borough ordinance and for her neighbors. No effort whatsoever was made to rectify. When the stop order, work order was filed, the defendant had a right to appeal to the Bergen County Construction Board and failed to do so. The defendant made several constitutional claims. One, that there was no requirement for a jury trial. That they were entitled to a jury trial, and the judge said that there was no requirement for a jury trial. The second, that they were not permitted to file a cross-complaint. In a borough ordinance of this nature, there is no cross-complaint. They can file a separate action in Superior Court, but not a cross-complaint to violating the municipal ordinance. And then they said that the borough had no right to zone under the Constitution. And the judge reminded the defendant that, according to his days in law school, zoning has been legal since the 1930s. The defendant was given 20 days to appeal and advised strongly to hire counsel. I might add that I personally advised the defendant to get counsel several times. If they don't appeal in 20 days, the defendant was told to come back to court on June 6th at 10 a.m. with a plan on how to pay and produce for the court her 2013 tax return and most two recent pay stubs. She was asked through an interpreter if she understood the decision. Initially, she asked for some clarification, which the judge made, and she said she fully understood. I've been following this case for a while, and upon exiting the courtroom, the defendant's husband made a remark that was so utterly disgusting and disrespectful to the borough and to the residents that any ounce of compassion I had for the magnitude of this fine was out the window at that point. And I feel that this resident completely deserves this fine. It's reprehensible what happened to it, and they still show no remorse and no consideration for the borough. In addition to that, while we're talking about fines, in my box, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people, 8 residents who were fined $1,000 for their grass clippings line. This was not grass that was just a little bit too high. These are hay fields. And the borough, the building inspector issued warnings. So we'll see how these play out. But the point here is we all live in this community, and we all have to keep it looking its best for ourselves, for our neighbors, for people, I'll say as a realtor, for people looking to buy homes in this community. And when you let your home go down and you let it look bad, you hurt everybody. You hurt every single resident in this community. And the borough's just not going to tolerate it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Councilman Messer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the pleasure of being a chaperone on the 6th grade outdoor excursion last week for 3 days up to 50 lakes. And while I am both physically and mentally exhausted from the trip, I do promise to have a more in-depth report for the next week. Thank you.
Councilman Borough.
Mr. Messer, my son thanks you for being a chaperone, a good chaperone. I want to thank all the members of the volunteer squads, the members of the mayor and council, and members of the public for coming to our Memorial Day services yesterday. They were well attended, and it's very nice, very moving ceremony. The Maywood Volunteer First Aid Squad is having a blood drive on June 7th, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. in this building downstairs. I would encourage everybody who can donate to please do. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Council President Bellerini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick updates from the police department. The chiefs advised the borough administrator and myself that we have 2 retirements pending. One I think this council was aware of. The other, more recently, Captain Steve Hoffman has announced that he'll be retiring this year. So that creates an additional 2 openings in the department. We will be processing the applications and appointments from the last 2 retirements very shortly. But we can see the flux still happening in the police department, something this council will need to continue to address. They had a busy Memorial Day weekend, but fortunately it was limited to just some basic noise complaints and some traffic issues. The 3 vehicles that this council approved should be delivered within the next 2 weeks. We had a discussion about communications with this council and the chief some time ago. Just wanted to let everybody know that our police radio issue will be addressed with the new antenna. So that will help with the overall police communications. And for the residents, 2 quick things. The police department is involved in a Click It or Ticket campaign. This is a state-funded program through a grant where officers assigned to the program to enforce drivers to use their seatbelts. Officers who dedicate time to that campaign, their salaries will be reimbursed with the grant. And then also the chief wanted me to ask everyone to continue to provide information, if they have it, on a missing person, a Colin Hart, a 54-year-old male, last seen on April 18, 2014. He resides on Essex Street, 5153 Essex Street. All area hospitals have been notified, police departments have been notified. I've seen the alerts on social media as well as in the press. At this point, the PD has exhausted every lead they have. They are still working to develop new ones. But once again, the chief asks if anyone has any information, please contact the Maywood Police Department. More information on the case can be found at the police department website or on their Facebook page. That is it, sir.
Thank you, Council President. Briefly, I want to also echo the words of Councilman Fabray and thank everybody for turning out to the Memorial Day services yesterday. They were very well attended. It kind of ties into the Monuments Committee that we've established that are working on rehabbing the monuments in Memorial Park from the World War II monument all the way up to the World War I monument. We're working on a new landscaping plan to kind of highlight that area and working with the American Legion and the Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts about doing some new landscaping and potentially putting in new monuments for the engagements that occurred after Vietnam, that being Desert Storm and the current Enduring Freedom engagement, to list the servicemen and women who served from Maywood. So that is ongoing. Along with that, and the refurbishing of the monuments, it will be the installation of new benches in that area. We've already obtained, I believe, 6 new benches, which will be replacing the old metal benches that are in that area. We're also looking for sponsorship of new benches for Fetzer Park. There's 1 bench right now by the Firemen's Monument down there. Potentially looking for more benches in that area. So if anybody has any interest in getting involved with any group to sponsor a bench, you can speak for the borough administrator during the week. Fall Fest is scheduled for October 5th. There will also be the Hawks 5K run that day as well. The Rotary 5K was just done on the 17th, and it was very well attended and participated. Participation was very high. So they did very well, and thank you to all the sponsors, and especially to the Rotary for putting that together again this year. July 4th parade will be on the 4th of July, which is a Friday this year, 9 o'clock, and the fireworks will be on Sunday the 6th in Memorial Park. That's all. I know the borough administrator is working very closely on the pool renovations. The pool did open Memorial Day weekend. The bathrooms are still being renovated, completely renovated. There have been provisions for temporary bathrooms at the location. I know the handicap accessible bathroom has been done. I believe one of the bathrooms is close to being done. It depends on the definition of close, I guess, but
hopefully before the pool opens up full-time every day, the renovations will be done. These are complete renovations of the bathrooms down there, and actually switching the men's room to be where the ladies' room was, and the ladies' room where the men's room was. So it's a substantial rehab of the pool, and something that was necessary, and I think it's going to look great when it's done. So I thank everybody and every member of the pool for their patience and understanding that we'll get to a good result, hopefully very soon. I do have one quick closed session personnel issue, if we can do that, and that is all I have. Next item on the agenda, we have no resignations. There are the following appointments. We have summer recreation program counselors, which are listed in item 1 under appointments. Employee appointments for 2014 swim pool season. We have a full-time lifeguard head swim team coach, a full-time lifeguard swim instructor, part-time lifeguard substitutes. Number 3, we have swim pool concession employees as listed, and we also have Jason D'Elia as a probationary member of the Maywood Fire Department, signed to Peerless Energy Company effective May 27, 2014. Is there a motion to approve the appointments?
So moved.
Roll call.
Lindenau?
Yes.
Eisenberg?
Yes.
Messer?
Yes.
Fabre?
Yes.
Ballerini?
Yes. Okay, council approval. We have 3 items on for council approval. Is from the Maywood Police Department permission to hold the annual National Night Out event on Tuesday, August 5, 2014, in Memorial Park, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Number 2 is to appoint Police Officer Timothy Cook as a permanent member of the Maywood Police Department effective May 22, 2014. He has ended his probationary period. Number 3 is from the Board of Fire Officers, request permission for Truck 17 to attend the Rutherford Fire Department wet down on June 7, 2014, and the Lincoln Park Fire Department wet down on June 28, 2014. Is there a motion for the approval?
Move for approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Lindenau?
Yes.
Eisenberg?
Yes.
Messer?
Yes.
Fabre?
Yes to 1 and 2, abstain from 3.
Ballerini?
Yes. Resolutions by title.
Resolution 10114, resolution authorizing the refund for overpayment of tax payment for Block 99, Lot 5. Resolution 10214, resolution accepting the proposal for third-party administrator, TPA, services and appointing insurance design administrators, IDA, to adjudicate medical plan variances. Resolution 10314, a resolution authorizing the reconstruction of various catch basins in the Borough of Maywood and ratifying payment thereof.
A motion for adoption of the resolution.
Move for the adoption.
Second.
Roll.
Lindenau?
Yes.
Eisenberg?
Yes.
Messer?
Yes.
Fabre?
Yes.
Ballerini?
Yes. We have no ordinances to introduce. Any new business? Old business? Miscellaneous business. Trivia of the day. The 3 South Side streets, the last streets off of Maywood Avenue, were originally known as 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Street, starting from Essex Street. 1st Street has been turned into Demarest Place. It's named after Garrett Demarest, who died in World War II. 2nd Street was named Howcroft Road, after the Lydeckers named it Howcroft Road because their farm was originally Howcroft Farm. And the 3rd Street place, which is named after Stacy John Hamill, who passed away and was killed in World War II as well. That's the trivia today. This being the 100th one, I'll keep this up all year. Okay, we have one item for closed session, I believe. A motion for closed session.
Second.
Lindenau?
Yes.
Eisenberg?
Yes.
Messer?
Yes.
Fabre?
Yes.
Ballerini?
Yes.
Be resolved by the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Maywood, pursuant to the provisions of the Open Public Meeting Act, the Mayor and Council in closed session discuss the following subject matters: personnel. Be it further resolved that precisely determines the time the discussion conducted in said closed session can be disclosed to the public upon taking final action thereon, provided disclosure shall not violate the attorney-client privilege or constitute an undue invasion of privacy. And be it further resolved that the Mayor and Council of the Borough of Maywood do not envision that they will return to open session after this meeting, but reserve the right to do so.
Thank you.